Welcome to Stuff They Didn't Teach Me in Sunday School. How quickly they forget. How quickly they forget. One of the most astounding stories in the Old Testament to me is at Exodus chapter 32. How quickly they forget. Moses has been up that mountain for about 40 days. He hasn't come down. The people are wondering what's happened to him. They assume maybe he's died. In Exodus chapter 32, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron. And remember, Aaron is like Moses' second in command, so he's in charge of these people. And said to him, "Make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we don't know what's become of him." Make us gods who brought us up out of the land of Egypt? They knew who brought them out of the land of Egypt. That hadn't been that long ago. The parting of the Red Sea, the 10 plagues back in Egypt, the crushing of the Egyptian gods under God's heel, hasn't been that long ago. And yet, when Moses tarries on the mountain, they say, well, you know, we're going to really need some gods here, Aaron. You're in charge of the religious welfare of this nation. You build us some gods. Verse 3. So all the people took off the rings of gold which were in their ears. By the way, these are the rings and the gold that they had taken from the Egyptians when they left. And they brought them to Aaron. And he received the gold at their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool, a clear violation of the first commandment, and made a molten calf. And they said, "These are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt." What irony. The calf was an Egyptian god. And they build an Egyptian god and then say, "These are your gods who brought you out of Egypt." Utterly ridiculous. When Aaron saw this, he built an altar before it. So Aaron helps out. And Aaron made the proclamation and said, and now he's going to confuse the religions here, "Tomorrow shall be a feast to Yahweh." And they rose up early in the morrow and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings, and the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play, which probably refers to some kind of orgy. God can see this, Moses can't. Yahweh said to Moses, verse 7, this is fascinating, "Go down, for your people, whom you brought up out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." Reminds me of two parents talking to each other when the son misbehaves. Your son did such and such. And God is saying to Moses, your people, whom you brought up, are messing up down there. You got to get down there. In verse 9, Yahweh said to Moses, "I've seen this people. And behold, it's a stiff-necked people. Now, therefore, let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, but of you I will make a great nation." So God is saying to Moses, step aside, get out of the way. I'm going to get those people. They are goners. Oh, the promise to Abraham's still good, but it won't be through them, Moses. It'll be just through you, and I'll wipe them out. And that puts Moses in the position of being a mediator. Verse 11, Moses besought Yahweh his God and said, "O Yahweh, why does thy wrath burn hot against thy people, whom thou hast brought forth?" Your people, whom you brought forth. God had said to Moses, "They're your people, you brought them forth." Moses points out, no, they're not. They're your people, you brought them forth out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand. And now his argument. Why should the Egyptians say, "With evil intent did he bring them forth to slay them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth"? Moses' argument, it's not going to look good when it hits the papers. God drags Israel out into nation, wipes them out at mountain's foot. Not going to look good when it hits the papers. And God relented. And then the scene changes. Moses, who hasn't seen what's going on, leaves God, who has seen what's going on, and Moses comes down the mountain. In verse 19, as soon as he came near the camp and saw the calf and the dancing, Moses' anger burned hot. You get the feeling that if both of them had seen the scene at the same time, Moses probably would not have pleaded the case for this nation. Moses' anger burned hot, and he threw the tables out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. I got to talk to Moses when I get to heaven. He is carrying the only thing that we know of that God has written with his very hand. He's carrying that down the mountain, and the scene that he sees in front of him makes him so angry that he throws that down. What I want to know when I talk to him in heaven is, what did you think as you watched those things crumble on the ground? Were you going, uh-oh, I got to go back up there and get these things done all over again? Or how are you viewing that? Apparently he was so angry, he wasn't thinking about that at the time. Verse 20, he took the calf which they had made, burned it with fire, ground it to powder, scattered it upon the water, and made the people of Israel drink it. A certain irony that they end up drinking their own God. And then he gets Aaron aside in 21. What did this people do to you that you brought a great sin upon them? He says to Aaron. And Aaron said, let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people, they're set on evil. For they said to me, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what's become of him. Get this. This is the best excuse, worst excuse actually in the whole Bible. And I said to them, let any who have gold take it off. So they gave it to me, and I threw it in the fire, and there came out this calf. Yeah, right. Well, I don't think Moses is buying that either. The consequences here are swift, severe, and immediate. The Levites are charged with going through the camp and wiping out a number of the people who had been involved in this pagan revelry. And then a plague breaks out and kills a bunch more of the folks. And yet, God hangs with this nation. And God will still see it through. He will still take them to the promised land. He will take them to the land that he promised to take them to. And he will for the sake of his covenant. He will because he's a God of grace. He will not because of how good these people are, but because of how good and gracious and loving God is. There's a lesson in there for you and me. He takes me to his promised land, not because I'm worthy, not because of how good I am, not because I've done all the right things, but because of his grace as he's shown it to me in his Son, Jesus Christ.